Hey, Tigers, I hope you're keeping safe and well. Guys, I just want to say your support has been truly phenomenal. But this, guys, is a trigger warning. This case for the Toy Box Killer needs an advisory content for you guys. So if you guys get easily triggered, then please don't carry on further. Please watch a previous video. Or there's multiple playlists on the channel. Please go take a look at those. But guys, if you are not easily triggered and you want to watch and find out more about this case, then here's Holly for you.
Live long and prosper. Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you are new to this channel, congratulations, you have stumbled over True Crime Tuesdays. I am your host for this week. My name is Holly. I'm your host every bloody week. If you're new here, please click the subscribe button, click the like button and comment down below your thoughts on this story, because let me tell you, it is a doozy. So as always, these stories that I bring to this channel are pretty gruesome, but this week's one comes with a very, very deep warning that if you do not like the subject of murders, rape, torture, bestiality, drug misuse, then please click off of this video right now, because it is not for you. Please go and watch some other videos that we've done. There's Junko Furuta, there's Joe Metheny, there's Jeffrey Dahmer, there's Vanessa Guillen, there's Breonna Taylor, there's Edward Gain, you know, there's a plethora of other stories in the playlist. Do not watch this one. If you are under the age of 18 as well, do not watch this video and go watch something else. Like in the last video, Peppa Pig is really good, although she is also shady. So today's story is about the Toy Box Killer. If you haven't heard this story, then welcome and have a good listen at this. It is very gruesome. It's very sick. This individual was not, well, he was proved to be sane, but you know, he just wasn't right. So David Parker Ray was the name of the guy who, with other people, created the toy box. If you hear banging, there were workmen outside, and I do apologize. So yeah, David Parker Ray was born on November the 6th, 1939 in New Mexico. He had a pretty crappy upbringing. His parents divorced when they were 10, so him and his sister went off to live with his grandfather, who was very strict, and he had rules, and if the rules weren't followed, it would lead to very violent abuse, basically. Yeah, his father was an alcoholic, and I do believe he was a drug misuser as well, and he would come every so often to see David and his sister. The mother, however, was an alcoholic, and when David's father and her split up, she disappeared, because that's great. So from grade school all the way to high school, David was emotionally and physically abused by his peers, basically. He was very shy, he was very quiet, and this just seemed to fuel people's need to bully him. During high school, David became an alcoholic, and he would misuse drugs to like a ridiculous amount. This is high school, so how old would he have been? Not very old. Not very old at all. And during this time, he would also form a fascination for sadomasochism and bondage and pornography and BDSM. He also had a collection of the pornographic magazines, and they were actually given to him by his father. He had a sister who was called Peggy. She found these pornographic images that David had drawn and stuff. They were quite disturbing, and she was shocked by them, but she would never like say anything up until the day that David went on trial. So from the like people on the outside, it looked like David was making the best out of a very crappy situation, from his crappy upbringing. Basically, he joined the army, he got an honourable discharge from the army, and while he was in the army he was a mechanic, and all of his friends and co-workers would say that he was a very hard worker, he was very helpful, and that he was great at his job, and he was always helping other people to, you know, to learn how to do things. And he would even, just to make his job a little bit easier, he would make his own tools. You know, he would craft them out of stuff and make his own tools just to make it a little bit easier for himself, which is great. So a few years later, David would marry his first wife, and David would confide in her that when he was a teenager, he captured a woman, tied her to a tree, tortured her, and killed her. Now, his wife at the time thought, well, he must be going through some mental difficulties because this can't be true, and she kind of took it with a pinch of salt. However, she would go on to say that he had increasingly disturbing behaviour throughout the marriage, and this is what led to their divorce in the end. Yeah, I wonder what this increasingly suspicious behaviour was. So let's speed this story up a little bit, shall we? Because it is going to be quite long. Let's zoom over to when David is in his 50s. He is now living in New Mexico still, in a small town called Elephant Butte. Next to Elephant Butte was a small city that was called Truth and Consequences. I don't know where they get these names from. They sound absolutely ridiculous. And right next to these two, there was a massive reservoir, and it made a little lake as well, you know. And this reservoir and lake brought retirement age people, the retirement community, into these two places, because they liked the warm weather and it was nice. They could go and ride the boats and everything and whatnot. However, it also attracted the strays, the prostitutes, the drug addicts, drug dealers, and the crime level at that time was the second highest in America. There was loads of rapes, murders, you know, stuff like that, and it tended to be the prostitutes that were the people that fell victim to these crimes, unfortunately. This was in 1999. So yeah, let's just like zoom over into the future, where David is in his 50s. He's living his best life. He's saved his money from working. He's got a job in Elephant Butte National Park, which is the biggest in the area. And he has a lovely living girlfriend with him. So he's got everything. He lives in a double wide trailer / caravan, as it's known in this country. And, you know, and so he thinks to himself, I think it is time to carry out my life's dreams. And his lovely living girlfriend was like, oh my goodness, I will help you. What a darling. What a darling. And my friends, this would be the creation of the toy box. So between the two of these absolutely upstanding citizens of America, they spent over £100,000 on a trailer. It was empty, it was soundproof at the time. They also, that £100,000 included all of the supplies that they would put into this hellhole. The trailer was put on his property in the back garden, and that's when they filled it with a ton of shit, basically. Do you want to hear what they filled it with? Let's go. These supplies were things like saws, knives, needles, surgical tools, whips, chains, straps, a fur-lined coffin, tons of doctor's equipment and tools, an electrocution clamp, ropes, and a whole bloody bunch of intimidating sex toys. And in this trailer again, David decorated the walls with pornographic images out of magazines of women who have been gagged, tied up, strangled, and they kind of like, they made it their wallpaper, you know. Ugh. I will just put out there that this is where it starts to just get terrible. So turn away for sure, for real. Please go away if you don't like this kind of stuff. So David took on a new hobby of building his own dildos. I am not yet adult enough not to just giggle inside about that word. So yeah, he made this particular one, right? It was made out of PVC tubing, like this. And he made it fabulous. He's so creative. At the bottom of it, however, there were nails sticking up, like this, that were there to cause pain, obviously, to tear the skin. And there were also ones that were sticking outwards, like this. You can find photos of this. I'm unsure if Mikey will actually put this into the video because of, you know, demonetization and whatnot. I've seen a photo of it. It's disgusting. He also made a couple of penetration machines that were just, you know, those things, yeah. If you're old enough to know what I mean, you know what I mean. But again, these were made to not pleasure people at all. They were made to damage people, basically. He also made leg spreaders, like that's supposed to keep your legs apart. But again, these were made to an extreme where they would make your hips pop out of place and tear your muscles. Right in the middle of this trailer, there was a massive, huge black gynecologist chair. You know, the ones with the stirrups where you go if you're having a baby. You stick your legs up on the stirrups and the doctor goes, ooh, to your vagina. Yeah, he had one of those. I have no idea how he would get one of those, but I suppose if he got surgical tools and stuff, he would have a place where he could buy this kind of thing. There was also a mirror mounted above this gynecologist chair, so whoever was in it could see what was happening to them. He also made a wooden contraption that would bend somebody over and immobilize them. And what he would do with this is he would get somebody on it, he would restrain them on it so they cannot move. Mostly these women were drugged and didn't know what was happening anyway. And he would let dogs and other people come and do what they will with this victim. It was said that he put gravy and stuff on the women's genitals so that the dogs would just go at it. The thing being is with David, that you all need to realise is this: he did not want consenting adults, he wanted victims, basically. He wanted to torture people and he wanted to kidnap people. You know, it's... Ugh. Look, this story is going to be a long one, okay? So just hang tight. It doesn't get much better. So in March, on March 22nd, 1999, David decided to dress up as a undercover policeman. And he went to the local store in the car park. He approached this sex worker who offered him a blowjob, you know, for some money, because this is what the sex workers do. He then says, like, he said that you're under arrest for solicitation of sexual activities, and he handcuffed her, put her in the car and took her to his home. This woman was called Cynthia, and you know what happens to her is not great. So when they get to his home, he takes her inside and chains her to a bed in the living room. Who has a bed in their bloody living room? And he also put like a dog collar on that had spikes on it. You know, like, and he locked it on her, basically. So Cynthia was at David's for about 3 days. And, you know, on the third day, she was like thinking to herself, like, I really need to get out of here or else I'm gonna die. Which, yeah, it's quite the possibility. So anyway, on the third day, David went off to work and good old Cindy, David's girlfriend, gets a phone call, and she's like, all right, and she walks off into the kitchen to chat to whoever was on the phone. Now, Cynthia looks to the side of her, to the table at the side of her, and she sees that Cindy has left the keys to her restraints on that table. So she kind of does a book shuffle to where these keys are, grabs the keys, and starts trying to unlock herself.
Oh, Mikey, it's alright. Mikey, you've just messaged me. I got you. Got you, boo. Yeah, it's a real struggle. Stop texting me, Mikey.
She did have a little bit of struggle because obviously her arms and stuff were probably tied behind her back and whatnot, but she was also tied to a bed. So Cindy, while she's on the phone, she hears this little bit of a struggle, and she goes in. She says to her friend, "I'll just ring you back. Give me 1 second, I'll ring you back." And then she goes into the living room and sees Cynthia trying to unlock herself from these restraints, and Cindy jumps on her, basically tries to beat her to death, tries to knock her out, whatnot. She gets the lamp off the table, smashes it over Cynthia's head. This story is just, what's the name? Intense, yeah? Smashes it over her head, wanting to knock her out. This does not knock her out. Cynthia eventually gets her arms free, and she's like, yes, I have got my arms free. Obviously, Cindy is still attacking her, and Cynthia sees a ice pick to the side of her, and she grabs it and stabs it in Cindy's neck. If this is not like something out of a horror movie, I don't know what is. So she's stabbed her somewhere from here to here. It's not quite made clear, and Cynthia gets up and she bolts it out of the door as she's running down the street. Bear in mind that she's butt naked, she's got this dog collar on, and she probably looks like she's been beaten. She bolts it. She tries to flag down drivers, like cars and stuff, but nobody was like wanting to get involved. They see this naked woman with a dog collar on who looks like she's been beaten, probably is a drug addict, which she was, and yeah, they don't want to be involved in that. So eventually she goes knocking on people's doors, and eventually this woman answers the door and lets her come inside, and they ring the police. The police come, they take her to hospital, and Cynthia's telling them her story of what's happened to her, and the police are like, look, mate, can you see the problem here? She's a sex worker. She's also a drug addict. Why are we going to believe this woman? Like, it's just not credible. She's probably had like some kind of psychosis due to drugs. Makes sense, right? So yeah, so that's that bit of the story. Whilst she's in hospital telling the police this, she looks over to the entrance, and who does she see walking in? None other than Cindy with this flipping ice pick in her flipping face or neck. So Cynthia, so lots of Cynthias. So Cynthia starts screaming, oh my God, that's her, that's her. And she starts panicking. So the police go over and like question this woman, and she's a bit suspicious. So they end up going to the house and searching the house, and they see the bed, they see the restraints, they see the bucket that Cynthia's been weeing and pooping in for the past 2 days. They see signs of a struggle, so they're like, well, actually, maybe this woman's telling the truth. So Cindy and David were taken into custody for questioning, and while this was happening, police searched the house even more. They would go into the backyard and they would just find the toy box, and, you know, whatever, it's disgusting. So they go into this trailer and they saw a variety of signs. One of the signs saying Satan's den, the other one said the law of Satanism. So police were like, yeah, this is what drives this man, he's satanic. So next to the Satan's den poster sign thing, there was a very tall camcorder that had that had an RCA camcorder on it. It's quite pricey, quite expensive. You know, it still had a tape in it, and it was pointing directly at this massive gynecology chair. There was also a clipboard hanging on the wall next to it, and it was like a roll call for victims, basically. Yeah. That he had kidnapped between the years 1993 and 1997. It had like dates on it, like abducted on dates, and then next to the date there was like a tally. So investigators believe that on that date, the number next to it was the amount of assaults that he had carried out, basically. There was like a bulletin board that had pictures, like photographs of his victims and stuff that he had done to them. There was a quote on the board, and let me just read it to you. I've got my thing here. This quote said, "A woman will do or say anything to get loose. They will kick, they will scratch, offer money, bite, yell, beg, scream, run, offer sex, threaten, lie, wait for opportunities, standard excuses and sob stories, menstruating, pregnant. Don't let her get to you. She's worth taking. She's worth keeping. She must be subjected to hypnosis before the woman can be safely released. Never trust a chained captive." What the actual crap, bro? You know. Investigators then go to the tape record, like the camcorder thing, and they review the tape, and they see that David is right beside the tape, and a woman, and basically she's tied up in the chair, and she's butt naked, and they could tell that she was kind of drugged, you know, she'd on some kind of substance. While investigators were watching this video, a voice recorder kicks in. They can see David go and press a button, and this voice recorder kicks in, and it would be what he would call his hypnosis tape. And it went on for 40 minutes. It was Monday, and you can listen to it on YouTube if you wanted. It was basically an introduction tape that explained that he was playing a game with them, like a torture game, and he basically what he was going to do to them. David described that his acts were for himself and for the congregation, so this led investigators to believe that this was a lot bigger than they originally thought. Yeah, the congregation of Satan is what he said. Yeah, you can find these videos of the sound recordings on YouTube. They are pretty much garbled shit, basically, and yeah, they're 40 minutes long. So police were looking at this footage, trying to figure out who the woman was, and fortunately enough for her, she had a very distinctive tattoo on her thigh, and it was like very unique. So the images were very grainy, and quite bad quality. So they sent it off to the FBI to make it a little bit better so they could see it. And when that happened, the FBI released it to the media. Somehow the media put it out there all on the news. And this is when a woman called Kelly would come forward and be like, "This is my tattoo." So Kelly goes to Elephant Butte Police Department after seeing that her tattoo was all over the news. Basically what happened that night was she had an argument with her husband. She was like, "F this," and she went out with her friends. While she was out with her friends, she met a girl, an old friend called Jessie. And obviously when her friends decided that they wanted to go home, she was comfortable enough with Jessie. And after having one beer, she felt dizzy, she felt sick, you know, and she asked Jessie if she could take her home. And Jessie was like, "Yes, of course." However, the thing that you need to know is that Jessie is the daughter of David Parker Ray. So instead of taking Kelly home, she takes her to her father's, where she was held captive and drugged and raped and tortured for 2 whole days. David thought that Kelly was dead, so he went and dumped her at the side of a road where another man picked her up and basically made sure that she was okay. Now, Kelly's husband didn't believe any of this story that she told him because she couldn't remember anything that happened after Jesse taking her home. Yeah, he thought that she was cheating on him or she'd gone on a drug binge basically, and so eventually they got divorced, and within that same week Kelly then moved to Colorado. They questioned her anyway. She said that she was having nightmares recently, or ever since that night basically, of her being raped and tied up and tortured, and she didn't really think anything about it. She thought she was just a little bit stressed. So the police were questioning her, and then they told her that they had found a video, and she was like, well, I don't really know what you're on about. I have got no clue what happened that night. So they showed her this video and she was shocked to see that it was her in the video, and that's where they found the picture of her tattoo. So whilst watching this video, everything came back to her and she could put the pieces back together. The media obviously got a hold of this story somehow, and another woman called Angelica came forward. Now, Angelica had reported this abuse of herself by David Parker Ray when it happened, when she was released from his captive. And the police basically looked at her and said, well, she's a sex worker, she's a drug addict, don't believe a word that she's saying, some kind of drug psychosis, blah, blah, blah. They dismissed it. So she came forward again when it came out on the news about Kelly, and she was like, I just want to follow up on my case. What's happening with it, because this happened to me and I've not heard anything about it, basically. And the police were like, oh shit, yeah, okay, we believe you now. So investigators talked with Cindy, and you know, Cindy's friend and everybody described her as like, you know, Christian radio listening, romance novel loving, dog lover kind of person. So while the investigators questioned her, Cindy said that she took part in multiple assaults on these women, and she was willing to give any information that they needed to get David sent down, basically. She told investigators that David knew that he'd been tipped off to the police by to the FBI by somebody. And basically when the FBI went around and questioned him about his slavery ring, he reassured Cindy that he'd talked himself out of it and everything would be okay and not to worry about it. She said that David would sell women to these slavery rings, these men for slavery, and he would talk about the women and call them packages. She also said that David was making his own torture devices, just from like basic rubbish that he would find at work or on the street that people were throwing out. You know, you got to give it to the guy, he's creative. She claimed that David took photos of his victims and she would later burn them after some time. So the investigators weren't too happy about this because that was evidence that they had lost, basically. She killed, wait, no, she did not kill. She said that he killed over 30 people. She said that he tried to put one in the lake and it floated to the top, so then he learned how to cut open the stomach and so that the water would go into the body and they would sink. He would later go get the bodies again, put rocks in it, so that they would never just resurface again. You see, the man's not stupid. So Cindy basically claimed that he had dropped 7 women or 7 bodies into this lake, but investigators were like, well, the lake is too deep, it's too dark, and they questioned whether to empty the lake, but they decided not to because it just would cost too much money. So, you know, if you ever go to Elephant Butte, if it is still a place, that lake probably has 7 bodies or more in it. Try not to go swimming in there. So Cindy was charged with conspiracy to kidnap, for being an accessory to kidnapping, accessory to criminal penetration, and was sentenced to 36 years in prison and only had to serve half of this, which was 19 years, and was up for release in 2017. I don't know if Mikey can find where the woman is now. I did not look that far into it, you know. David's daughter, if you remember, Jessie, was known to be a drug dealer in the area, and she was quite violent. When she was questioned, she claimed that she was the person who gave the FBI the anonymous tip about her father's slavery ring, you know. So Kelly's accusation of Jessie being the one that drugged her basically led to Jessie's arrest. And Jessie was charged with kidnapping, criminal sexual penetration, criminal sexual contact, and conspiracy. She was released after serving 2.5-year sentence and put on probation for a year. So God knows what that woman's doing now. Let's go back to David. David Parker Ray from day one basically said that he was innocent, he had nothing to do with anything. Everybody in the videos were prostitutes and they were consenting that he was paying them basically, and the accusations that were up against him were absolutely ridiculous, and he was making out that he was a victim, which is probably the biggest trait of a narcissist, really. You know, nothing's their fault. Because he planned and made all these tools and stuff, the court was like, you're clearly very sane and you can, you know, carry out this type of thing and plan it and everything. So there is nothing wrong with your mental state. And the court could only really charge him with 3 counts of this whole thing, and they were the 3 living ones: Cynthia, Kelly, and Angelica. However, FBI suspect that there were over 40 other victims due to entries into his diary that was in his own handwriting, which documented the date of the kidnap, what he did to them, etc., etc. In 2001, the courts decided to put him on trial. There were 3 separate trials. However, Angelica's did not come forward because Angelica sadly passed away from a drugs overdose. David eventually agreed to take a plea deal so that his daughter would get a reduced sentence, which she clearly got a reduced sentence, only serving 2.5 years for kidnapping people, which is absolutely fucking great. So David in total got a whole 224-year prison sentence. Whatever, investigators believe that he raped, tortured and killed over 60 women in the end. So that pretty much brings us to what happened to David Parker Ray and where is he now. The sly, slick little man, disgusting human being, actually suffered a massive heart attack on the 28th of May in 2002, and he died. Passed away. He's at peace, you know. He gets away with all of this, and none of the bodies were ever recovered. You know, they were just never recovered because nobody knows where the crap he put them. So yeah, what do you think to this story, guys? Comment down below. Don't forget to give us a like and a thumbs up. I am going to go and get ready to go and see a date.
Huzzah, I hear you say. Yes, okay, fabulous.
Anyway, yeah, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to be nice to each other. There's too much hate in this world already for you to be a flipping idiot. So, goodbye. We love you. Thank you for watching. Subscribe. You know, do your thing. See you later. Oh, by the way, next week is Joseph Fritzl. Bye.
Boo! I'm back again. Guys, that was an amazing episode. Holly, thank you so much, chick. I've got to hand it to you. This was absolutely brilliant to edit. Guys, if you want to know how Holly's date went, comment down below. Comment.